Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
So we take these actions, and then now Republicans are mad at me for taking these actions. They're not doing anything, and then they're mad that I'm doing something. I'm not sure which of the things I've done they find most offensive, but they've decided they're going to sue me for doing my job. I mean, I might have said in the heat of the moment during one of these debates, I want to raise the minimum wage, so sue me when I do. But I didn't think they were going to take it literally. We can't afford to wait for Congress right now. That's why I'm going ahead and moving ahead without them wherever I can.
Yeah, and the masses applaud. I'll leave it at that. Welcome back, folks. Joining us now is Matt Lewis, senior contributor for the Daily Caller and contributing editor for The Week magazine. Hello, Matt. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great.
And you know, when you hear, I got to tell you, when you hear him talk like that, it's just like, you know, the Constitution be darned, the system of government be darned. I'm the president. I'll do what I want. We can't wait for them. And too bad if they don't like it. Let them keep suing me.
Yeah, and he's really good at that, right? And I mean, I think it worked for a long time, but 6 years in, I think the shtick is kind of wearing thin. And it's also such a false, you know, sort of, it's a non sequitur. In other words, let's assume he's right and that Congress is, you know, inept and impotent and that there's all this gridlock. That is not an invitation for the president to all of a sudden usurp legislative authority and begin doing things outside his, you know, the constitutional scope of the executive branch. And it seems like that's essentially what he's arguing, that I have to do this because they're not doing their job. Well, I don't find anywhere in the Constitution that says that that's, you know, appropriate.
No, it might be in Rules for Radicals, though, which is probably just as good for him. Let's talk about the lawsuit that Boehner says will be announced, I think he said this week today. You know, I've had many conservatives on who say, and you've heard from them, not a good idea. There's ways for Congress to handle this, and Boehner's being a coward. He won't tighten the purse strings or cut off funding where they can, and certainly he won't impeach. So he's taking the third option and is going through the courts. But you say no.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, first of all, there's precedent for this in a sense. The question is, does John Boehner have standing? We don't know yet, and one could easily understand why the courts may decide that it would be in their best interest not to sort of play the referee between the other two branches of government. But there is a precedent for the Supreme Court slapping down presidents. It happened with, you know, most famously with Harry Truman when he tried to nationalize the steel industry in 1952, and they ruled that he was, quote, making law. This was important because it sort of chastened future presidents and kept them within, you know, their scope of authority. And by the way, I think we all agree that there are certain executive orders that a president has the right to give. The question is, where do we cross that line and go into the sort of legislating field? And I think it would be healthy for somebody to kind of clearly define the separation of powers and what's appropriate and what's not. The other thing, by the way, is I happen to be one of, you know, call me a squish, but I think that it would probably be a fool's errand and very bad politics to try to impeach Obama at this point.
I want to make it clear, I'm not calling for that. I'm just saying those are the options that, you know, that he has available to him. Yeah.
So I would actually argue that in lieu of doing this, in lieu of going for impeachment, this is something that I think might be smart politics for Boehner and also actually principled, because I really do believe that it's important to, you know, clearly define the responsibilities of the various, you know, and the rule that we were honoring the rule of law, if nothing else.
Oh, absolutely. And I know you'll agree with me on this. I don't want to get caught in the leftist trap. I watched CNN today, and they had Ana Navarro, and she was the Republican going against some Democrat on this very issue. And Ana Navarro said, oh, well, you know, on both sides, people are unhappy. And, you know, I don't want to get caught up in the counting of executive orders and the counting of appointments. I think what this suit has to be mostly about is the president selectively enforcing and not enforcing existing law. That, I think, is pretty unprecedented.
Yeah, I agree. It's very egregious. I mean, if the president, and by the way, this transcends executive orders. This goes to recess appointments, which the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that he had overstepped his bounds with recess appointments. It goes to unilaterally changing deadlines for Obamacare and pushing, back the employer mandate. This is really a much larger trend, and I think that Speaker Boehner is targeting one facet of it. But to just simply decide that there are some laws that you're not going to enforce is absurd. And I really
did it, Matt. He did it with welfare reform, part of it. He's done it with immigration. He's done it with the Zone Affordable Care Act. And this is what I think Republicans really need to drive home, that it's not about, so the left says, oh, well, look at how many executive orders he signed compared to Bush. Bush signed more. It's not about that necessarily.
Absolutely. It's not about the number of executive orders, because by that count, Obama's not that bad. But if you look at the things he's done with the executive orders, which things he's chosen to champion, these are things that are, for one thing, very controversial. And I think it'd be much better for our nation to actually grapple with these things and to have a conversation about them. And it's not pleasant always. I mean, I'm actually in favor of immigration reform, and I would support the DREAM Act. I would support the Enlist Act. But I want it to be done appropriately by the rule of law. I don't want the president to just decide which laws he's going to enforce or not enforce. At the end of the day, I care more about balance of power and rule of law than I do about any given policy decision.
Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I'll ask you this. I don't know if you can answer it for sure, because we both have questions about standing. But I would assume, and we have less than a minute, that if he could show that they're the Congress and the president is not enforcing the laws that the Congress passed, then they are affected. I mean, they should have standing.
I'm not a lawyer either. I think that, from what I can discern, that's the big hurdle. And it's partly because, do they have standing? And it's partly because the courts may be loath to play this role. They may be looking for a way to avoid it. But I think it's worth, again, it's not completely unprecedented. And I think it's an option worth exploring. And by the way, the House has passed a bill which would expedite these things, which would send them immediately to the Supreme Court to be an arbiter. I think it would be healthy to have somebody who can be dispassionate to decide what is proper. What can the president or can the president not do?
Absolutely.
We don't really know.
Matt, great talking to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Matt Lewis, ladies and gentlemen, Daily Caller and The Week Magazine. We're coming back with more of the Steve Malzberg Show.